The Datavana podcast, hosted by Lon Wax, features visionaries, leaders, and really smart people who join our hosts to converse about marketing, sales, operations, and everything that data ties together. We focus on practical examples, stories, and horror stories, centering around what Data Nirvana looks like and what the path is to achieve it.
All right, Mr. Kyle Lacey, welcome to the Datavana podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, of course. So listen, this Datavana podcast is really exciting. We're going to go through like massive technical details and technology. We might even add like 200, 300 slides just for the fun of it. But why don't we start with you? Because really we want to hear about you, not about me. You know, I talk too much, right? Things we ask people on the show is not about your title and your career path and all that really, but it's about what would Kyle be if Kyle wasn't the CMO of Lessonly and this marketing guru? Who would you be and why?
I'd be military history professor, mainly around either time frames of 1850 to 1890 or 1930 to 1950, and that's it. I might even do it after all this stuff, but yeah, it's definitely if I am doing something on the side, it's military history.
So why did you skip World War One? Just curious.
I'm not as familiar with it, and I didn't spend that much time on it. I don't have. I mean, I'm like you. I've got a lot of energy, but I don't have like a massive amount of energy. So my time is spent on. I started out at this as Civil War when I was younger. There's a movie called Gettysburg. I don't know if you've seen it, but I watched it 20 times when I was little, and then it's not good. It is not a good movie. I do not recommend it. I went and watched it.
Audience, scratch that. Don't see the movie.
No, but that movie got me on the Civil War kick, and then I moved into World War II.
Well, World War II is like the Great Wars, obviously, like tons of stuff there, all the way from heroism to mass destruction and sadness and all that. I just watch, all of these like extra commercial movies like Midway and all those. They don't really tell the entire story, but they point you in the right direction. I prefer the reading to the watching, but it takes a little bit of commitment. But like it's cool. Going deep into history, my son is 8 years old nearly, and we go and we look at things not in an incomprehensible way, but go look at different elements of history together, all the way back to the Egyptian, obviously the Israeli story and all that. And I think it's cool. All right. So from now on, I'll just call you Professor Kyle, I guess, honorary professor of history. Like we should explore the history of B2B marketing, the origins. Where did it start? Where was the first email sent?
Riveting. Riveting content.
So Kyle, tell us, when was the first cold email sent by an SDR or BDR ever? And what was the response rate?
Oh, I guarantee you it was the ad agencies back in the 90s for sure. 80s maybe? I don't know. That's a great question. I can't imagine like a B2B marketing history book would be that riveting, to be honest with you, but maybe
you do that with funny one.
Should do it at some point in the future.
I think it would be a funny infographic direct mail, like the history of B2B marketing, everything that went wrong, and here's how we're going to get it right
annoying people since 1984.
Exactly, that's the slogan. I love it. So, Kyle, we start off. Afterwards, we go into a bit more of the data stuff and all that, but we really want to talk a little bit about the things that we all care about and that get us like energized. So, in marketing is probably today, B2B marketing, B2C marketing is the place that everybody has more acronyms than I think anything else. And sometimes we don't even ourselves remember what they say, but we use them. So if you could take one misconception that really annoys you, or maybe slightly annoys you, or an acronym in the marketing world, and eradicate it and delete it like the movie Yesterday, I don't know if you saw it, and like delete the Beatles.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one. Better than Gettysburg.
Yeah, well, more modern at least. What would it be? What would you eradicate from the world? Which misconception or acronym would it be?
Well, the misconception that I would erase is that marketing can't or shouldn't produce revenue, direct source revenue, which you and I have talked about. Marketing should direct source revenue and should be responsible for a revenue number. The acronyms are anything blank qualified lead, except product qualified lead, because I actually agree with that. But marketing qualified lead, sales qualified lead, I just think it further moves marketing and sales apart when we should be further aligned. So now that being said, my team's going to listen to this and be like, well, we do marketing qualified leads. So I have not eradicated it completely, but I wish that I could, because it should be just it's qualified, and it moves into demo.
Yeah, it's about the entity. It's not about leads. It's just, is it good? Sales ready or
not
not
the
sales
business
ready?
unit that sourced it, or if somebody's approving it. It's about whether or not it's qualified, plain and simple.
Yeah, it's a business unit is ready for sales or it's not ready for sales, so forth. Tell me a little bit about this revenue thing that you talk about. But like, I'll be obviously the devil's advocate, as you know me, which I love to do. Is, well, marketing revenue? No. Salespeople own revenue. They are in charge of it. Marketing throws the stuff over the fence. B2B, B2C, doesn't matter what. Like, how can marketing own or really be in charge of revenue? That is ludicrous.
Well, I mean, I think that marketing should have their hands in everything from direct net new revenue to expansion revenue. Like, marketing should also be supporting customer success. Marketing should actually be serving up leads to customer success to drive retention, drive expansion, right? So for me, it's if it's just qualified, if marketing is just throwing something over the fence, sales is responsible for closing it, right? But marketing should be responsible for that closed won revenue number as well, not just an influencer attribution number, which I think is complete crap. Is this you're going to edit this after? Can I cuss?
Dude, go away. We're a New York-based podcast. It's like, it's all legit. Unless you make fun of New Yorkers, you can stay on the show.
Oh, that's a completely different podcast. Being from Indiana, we spending some time in Boston, we could talk about that for a long time. But I think that attribution and influence is just complete bullshit. Unless you're trying to manage channel spend, attribution makes sense to me. But outside of that, marketing should be responsible. You should be comped off of it, and you should be generating revenue. Sales is going to close it unless you're the future of software, which is product qualified, right? Product growth. And that's a completely different discussion.
And that's a low touch, and we can talk about that later on, the product line, which is fascinating. So if we look at this a second more, because, you know, we know that we're going to converse and stuff and go off the agenda. Why not? That's the fun of it. The whole idea of attribution, I believe, going too deep into it and trying to understand things should be done by the person who owns marketing for decision making. Which channel worked, which campaign worked, which program. That's wonderful. The VP demand gen or the CMO with his team, great. Leading, lagging indicators. But when all of this attribution crap starts becoming a discussion with sales and SDR and CEOs and a Monday executive meeting, it's like, are we doing it to suffice other people? Is that what you're seeing? Is that why you think people always talk about attribution that are not in the marketing decision-making room?
Well, I think that there's a time and a place for influence and attribution numbers. It's probably when you're north of 100 million in revenue, when you have a lot more stuff to deal with and you're trying to figure out spend. When you're doing 1 to 30, all attribution is doing is just confusing you to make decisions, and you need to make decisions quickly.
Agility.
Right? Yeah. Agility, speed to value is extremely important when it comes to this stuff. So, you know, I think that attribution done well allows you to spend money in the right places at the right time. Outside of that, I have a hard time trying to figure out where the value is.
Yeah, you're right. It's an important point. Like at LivePerson, especially at Via, we did attribution to a more depth because we were like significant budget, significant company, channel marketing, and a lot of other stuff was really, really well developed. And it helped because you wanted to understand what really moves the needle across different organizations. But if you're just looking at trying to say like, is the email, is the campaign, is the content, like what works, what doesn't work, let's keep going and let's place the bets where they should be. I'm with you on that. And I think actually that's another thing that if we can eradicate would be stop talking about attribution before you talk about what works and just let's run it forward. Let's go together, sales and marketing.
So attribution in the past, the history of B2B has been used to prove that you were doing something. That's how I've seen it used in the past. Like, hey, we can attribute this money to all these different points in the life cycle. We're doing a great job. It should be used just to prove out you're not spending too much money on deals. I mean, that's really the way that I use it. And it should be used for cost attribution, not relevance.
Yeah, like this podcast is probably going to bring in 100,000 leads in one day, right? Because that's how podcasts work. Like immediately click attribution fully, along gets a crown. No, right? We all know that.
This podcast is going to attribute to 100% of revenue, which it should.
$1 billion. Yes, it's true. Everything contributes. Correct.
Absolutely.
So we talked a little bit about attribution, all that. But, you know, one thing that we do care about and part of this show is Attribution is data. Data is important, and data is always an issue. Insight is what we want, but we are a lot of time stuck in the data, and we all know that in a perfect world, we'll have everything in a fingertips. Siri would be implemented, or Alexa would be implemented into all the B2B systems and tell us everything, otherwise known as Rev Ops. Okay, tell me a little bit about the irrelevance of data. How important is data in your day-to-day job, or in your QBRs, or leading, lagging? What is data to you, and why is it so important?
I mean, it goes back to the attribution stuff. You know, at Lessonly, we take a creative and sometimes irrational approach to marketing, which means that we ignore data sometimes, right? So if you think about, if we're using like a percentage spread, 75% of what we do has data behind it. Like Google Ads, we know what to spend money on. Organic search, we should be building these pillar pages. These events worked. We're going to spend money here. The other 25% is irrational. Why did we do a board game? Why did we do a Lego llama? Why are we thinking about doing an e-commerce site? Like all that stuff is more irrational and more creative. So for me, data is mostly proving the revenue side of the business. And you know, this is where, you know, we influence 100% of revenue, whatever. When it comes to brand experiences, I don't really think about the data side of it. But when we're doing click rate optimization tests, which we run bi-weekly, we're looking at data all the time. And, you know, which channels source the closed won revenue. So I think it mostly has to do with the demand gen side when it comes to business, and making sure that we're allocating the right budgets to each channel and how they're working.
Many people, this is the analytics side. Many people come and say, well, everything in marketing is demand today. So if you can't attribute, or you cannot measure the relevance of something you're doing, like a podcast or something else, like why do it? Like, hey, why are you spending so much money on this stuff? Go spend on another lead. Well, how would you address that?
Because it's fun. Number one, it's fun.
Fun is important.
Fun is definitely important.
Especially now.
Definitely important. Number two, you know, if you want to scale, now speaking specifically for high growth software companies, if you want to scale, your culture needs to be intact. And the only way, in my opinion, that culture can stay intact is that marketing is involved in it. And I'm not gonna put a revenue number to our ability to grow culture. Like we did a book at Lessonly called Do Better Work. Our CEO wrote it. Has nothing to do with our product, has everything to do with our values as a company. And I'm not putting a number on that, right? We've sold X amount and we've made X amount of money on it, but that all goes into our foundation, right? And it's mostly a culture carrier for us. And so for me, I'm not going to sit in front of my amazing designers and brand team and be like, this book, I don't care. You know, if you spend 100 hours on illustrations for it, you need to generate 100,000 in revenue because it's a 10 to 1 or whatever the hell.
Yeah, I mean, every hour of design is always supposed to bring in $100 of revenue. Isn't it like always the measurement?
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's the point, is that I don't think that's fair.
Of course, it's so many, like, you know, distance. It's so detached, so many levels of detachment.
Well, and then that's when you get bad creative and bad marketing and a landing page that looks like everybody else and nothing changes.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can make an impact now, in my opinion, in this features war that we're in, because everybody can build product all the time, you've got to differentiate with experience. And by applying data to everything, it's kind of hard to do sometimes. That being said, data drives the majority of our spend as well. You know, so going back to that 75-25.
That's an interesting point. Yes, obviously the whole world. We talked lately about community, which I believe is the next phase after intent ABM. It's like really community and experiences around cohorts of people that have similar X. Everybody can define that X is, and data cannot always be driven to why people go to community, because there's a soft element to it, not just a hard element to it. And it's interesting to understand, like 75% can be measured. Yeah, everything paid outside, which is the channel, we should put some measurement in it, because then you can justify to yourself, what should I spend more on? But everything that's about brand, community, engagement, awareness, you can measure it as a lagging indicator, because you're seeing from a control group in a city, in a destination, and inbounds are going to explode of companies that have never inbounded before. I mean, at the end of the day, just let marketing do its job. It's going to work. Okay.
Well, and maybe I might find out later on that this is the wrong approach, which I'm more than happy to change my mind. I've done it in the past, but for me, it's all about the experience. The only thing that makes any of us relevant is the experience that somebody's having with whatever you're selling, right? Whether that's an idea or a piece of software. And so if I can generate the revenue using tools that we all have at our disposal, and that allows my creative side and my team to do things like a conference where we don't measure return. Like, we spend money on our user conference, Yellowship. We do not think about anything other than the experience, right?
Cool.
And that's it. And that's what marketers are here for, in my opinion, right? That's why consumer marketing is so interesting to me, even though they are very data driven as well, is that they also have this experience side of them that I think a lot of B2B marketers lack.
Yeah, but then they measure lifetime value of the time, and they know the touch points, so they can do it.
And that doesn't mean, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean you don't measure anything. I think somebody's going to hear this and think, well, he's just a marketer who doesn't measure anything. We had to prove that we could generate revenue as a marketing team and have the data behind how to generate revenue as a marketing team in order to do things like golden llamas and, board games and events where we don't measure return, because we are generating revenue on the demand side, and it helps each other, right? They help each other all day long. If we have an amazing brand play, it's going to drive inbound for sure.
I think that's part of the new modern marketing playbook, and you guys are rocking it, because if you weren't being successful and you would see decline in revenue coming from marketing, then you would start questioning your stuff. Like, should I do more of this? Should I do more of that? Yeah. But because it's continuing to be good, then you're seeing the complementary side of the measurable and non-measurable. We'll call you the non-data driven marketer in this episode summary.
Non-data driven marketing.
Yeah, exactly. by Kyle. We should never measure data.
Oh, what a great guess you had.
Yeah, it's like episode number X, delete. Okay. Tell me. Well, let's make fun of data a bit more. So one of the things we do in the show is we try to ask our guests to talk about horror stories. Like 1960s crazy Frankenstein, whatever it is. I think it was 1940s, but I'm not sure. And then the first movie, and try and understand. Like, give me an example. For example, like something that really exploded. Like, the tools were completely saying different things, and how can data go together? And I'll give you the clue. Ready? Dun, dun, dun! Data horror time.
It was one day back in December 2017. For me, it was when this was, I think, tail end of 2017. It's my first year at Lessonly. Beginning of 2018, Q1 of 2018, April timeframe, and our CFO uncovered that inbound leads have been dropping significantly over the last 6 to 8 months. Ooh. And I had not seen it, because we had been looking at a graph that just was not showing us the total volume of inbound going down. We were only looking at the ones that were working. And for me, that was horrific, because he just randomly stumbled across it working on some board decks. And if we had not seen it, it would have hurt us way more than it did, because of that data, because of the data that he found, we decided to blow up our website, got rid of all of our forms, cut our MQLs in half, and we 10x revenue, right? But that was terrible, because I was just sitting there with the exec team, and I was like, I'm sorry, I do not know why this is happening. I had no idea why it was happening, and it was horrific.
So it was a pretty much of a not fun experience, I'm sure, for you. But
no, and it's the point that sometimes we have all the data and it's great, and sometimes you don't know what's happening or why it's happening, right? Yeah. And that was just what scared me so much during that time.
Yeah, but I mean, of course, what you did is, like you said, well, okay, it's data, it doesn't matter, so we're still going to do what we do, right? Because that's what marketers do today. Yeah. No, you looked at it and you found the root cause, and you understood probably that it's the responsiveness of your website, and what you said, that people were like...
Responsiveness of our website. It was that Google was destroying our search rankings because our load times.
Yeah, I've had to switch platform before. Web platform, moved to a proper CMS and related one, because we reached our cap at one of the startups I was at, because that's as good as it gets, and it was not good enough.
That's how, and that's why you turn things around, right? I mean, I removed the entire marketing team out of the office and put them in another office building for 6 weeks, And that's all we
just to shame them.
That no, well, that's true. But no, that's all we did. Everybody. We didn't do anything other than rebuild the website, because that was the primary opportunity. And so what that taught me was sometimes you just need to focus on one huge project,
Definitely
get it done and knock it out of the park. But yeah,
Definitely.
I will never forget that. I will never forget that.
But I think, I mean, at the end, like, what a great opportunity. Yeah, of course, it was a little bit scary, but what a great opportunity to say to everybody, pause. We're doing this now. Like, this is our number one thing. It's also number two. It's not like we have 17 rocks for this quarter. Like, that's exhausting. It's hard.
Yeah. And going back to the data thing, the rational side, the reality was the data that we had, what we were seeing drop on traffic, the load times, everything. And then we had to group that with the irrational side, which is, and I think that's what's true creative and marketing, is that it's very irrational for me to say, I want to blow up our entire site. The marketing team's not going to work on anything else for 6 to 8 weeks, and that's it. But we had to put those together in order to win, which I think is a very important point. You've got to have the reality, and then you've got to be a little irrational to make big bets.
Yeah, you had a compelling event.
Because sometimes the data, you might still need to take the risk, and that's the whole point. I think that's what great marketers do, in my opinion.
It's hard. It's good for you. It's hard to do a decision saying, we've reached the point. Sorry, we're not doing anything else. No field, no this. This is what we're doing now. You will be back. We'll come back much stronger, and it's going to be 10x. Have trust. Tell me a little bit about, so if you talk about data, we call this Datavana because it's the Nirvana state, as you know, which is utopic, amazing. Anything works, like at your fingertips. So think about all of your tools and all of your systems, which I'm sure you have quite a few of, modern marketing stack, and of course the data that reports on it. What would you define as a data nirvana? What would that be for you as the person in charge of marketing?
Well, I'm a pretty simple man, honestly. And from a data perspective, I'm simplified even more. For me, it would be the 10 things that I need to look at daily delivered in my inbox in a way that is manageable and readable and shows me trends.
Is that the state today, or you're a little bit far from that?
No, we're far. We're getting there, but no, we're not close. And anybody who's like, why aren't you just setting up Salesforce reports? Like, go ahead. You can.
Because Salesforce has everything, right? Yeah. Well, but you need to get it all into Salesforce first. That's where the challenge is, right?
Right. Everything connecting and managing and data process and data management, cleanliness. And so for me, it is, if I could do that in a way where I'm getting reports, I'm getting the information from the outbound sales team, which reports to me, the organic and the paid and everything. And if you reach out to me to do a demo for your software that does this, you will need to pay money to a nonprofit in order for me to take the demo. I'm just going to throw that out.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. No. We're actually going to lead with that. In order to watch this podcast, you have to actually give 10% of your time to. I like it as well.
That's
the pledge.
Just a side note that I used to. I still do it randomly, but if somebody sends me a demo like email, I'll say, yeah, you can give money to donorsshoes.org. You give it $200 and I'll take it. And I've raised quite a bit of money.
Yeah. What's the conversion rate for them?
I think I've bought one.
That's a pretty high cost of acquisition overall, but it is what it is.
At least you're helping people.
That's good. I like it. So we talked about the Nirvana side. Now, to look at this whole thing, okay, I want a utopic Nirvana state of data in my inbox or whatever I decide, or dashboard, everything aligned. It's hard. And we all talk about it, and we keep talking about it, and it's months and months. Who is the data owner, champion, team, or whatever? Tell me a little about what Rev Ops means to you, marketing ops, sales ops. How does it work for you guys, and what is your vision on this?
So at Lessonly, it's FinOps. So it's financial, operations, and legal. It's all in one team.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And for me, the way that we're looking at it is it is Rev Ops, but it's sales ops, marketing ops, customer success ops. It's kind of the way that we're functioning. For me, it goes back to our original our first conversation around revenue alignment. I think it should be Rev Ops, and we're also seeing this on the sales enablement side. Like, we're seeing some teams turn from sales enablement to revenue enablement because they're doing all the enablement across the entire sales cycle, the entire funnel. So for us, when we talk about sales ops, it's very it's very focused, right? It's like what's happening on the handoff and when a contract's sold. But guess what? Software, you are way more valuable after the contract's being signed if you could figure out net dollar retention, expansion, retention. And so that from I firmly believe that anybody in sales ops should be evolving into Rev Ops. And Rev Ops is in my opinion, is the future of operations, at least at high growth software companies.
Who do they report to? Ideally.
Oh man. Ideally it would be the business unit owner, CRO. That would be ideal. I think whoever owns it, but I also think that CRO should handle the entire funnel. So,
yeah, post acquisition as well. Okay, yep. And are they the go-to team for you for like, hey guys, we're not sure about this data alignment between sales and marketing and attribution. Like, you guys are the owners. Can you please look into it? Is that the team?
Yeah.
And also making sure that the plumbing is in place, the infrastructure, connecting, the routing, and everything. Okay, so basically you're throwing it out of your hands.
It's a combination of analysts. I mean, I'm going to dumb it down completely. I'm sorry. But the way that I think about it, combination of you have data analysts and then Salesforce admins, if Salesforce is your CRM. And then you've got those data analysts can look through data and manage data. And I think the most important part of Rev Ops is surfacing findings, not building reports.
Oh, yeah.
For me, that's it.
I think that's a big.
I don't need any more reports.
Yeah, it's like data analysis paralysis is driving us all crazy. Yep. I want the insights, and I think that's an important piece that when I go to companies in my current role or before, I always try and put a Rev Ops person as one of my first hires. Yes, I try to make them a bit more marketing ops in the beginning because that's what needs more emphasis. But help us with takeaways. Tell us what is happening. What are the leading indicators? Give me this every week in the interlock meeting. At the QBR, like really tell us like what's going on. Just building reports and sending them over an email or a link. Like it is really hard for us to go over 10 reports a day and try to figure it out ourselves.
Now I appreciate the report building because I don't need it, because if I built them, none of it would be right. So just to be clear, I very much appreciate the report building.
At least it's the right data. Yeah. No, you're looking at the right truth. Yeah.
I mean, my second horror story would be the one where I built a report and sent it to everybody saying, look at these findings, and they were all wrong. So that's why I stopped building reports.
Well, you know, at least you had good intentions, Kyle. That is good.
I always have good intentions.
Yeah. I think the number one thing we see about Rev Ops is it's still in its infancy and being adopted completely as the serving 2-3 masters. I know that's a terrible way to look at it, but still being an unbiased source, challenging us in a nice way, saying, here are the insights, here are the takeaways. Maybe we should spend less on this channel where we have more this. And really looking across the entire funnel. That's what probably you, the CMO, CRO, we should all be looking at and understanding like, no, we don't need more paid. We should actually do